Hi, my name is Oscar Morales. I'll be discussing Chapter 10, Adolescence and Personality. So we're just going to just go briefly in the history of it where that word derives from, and it's derives from the Latin word to grow up or to come of maturity. The term was a byproduct of the Industrial Revolution. Um, in 1762, Frank Musgrove credited John um, Jacques Rousseau to invent the concept of adolescence. That's debated. Um, um, Moving with John Stanley Hall, he was known as the father of adolescent psychology. Was heavily influenced by Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. Hall theorized a biogenetic approach in which mankind relived the history of human evolution in four stages. The first one is um, at the infancy stage, that is crawling and mastering of sensor motory development. Second is the childhood stage of playing hide and seek, playing with toy weapons. The third stage, pre-adolescence, is that savagery savagery of human. I can't pronounce it. Savagery of human civilization. Um, so in the fourth stage, that's where Hall termed this unavoidable biological process of storm and stress that every adolescent must go through to reach maturity. And there are some drawbacks of that theory of the storm and stress. Um, Mead, who was a person that we discussed earlier in chapter 4, who was an anthropologist who studied girls in some Samal, I can't pronounce it, but these girls did not experience the same stress and go to the stress storm stress as how would uh, contest that each person has to go through this storm and stress. So Mead is kind of like, I want to say, a person that would like kind of disagree with Hall. So just in case, you know, that's just a drawback from Hall's theory. So this theory is no longer considered cross cultural, but it did help pave the way for Arnold Gazelle's theory of predetermined maturation, and that's pretty much when the person is capable of an offspring. Mm. So in non-literate societies, um, cultures perform a rite of passage for a person to become an adult. That's like circumcision, having tattoos. Um, that's when that boy or girl gains that social recognition. Um, but that's not really, that has lost its significance in modern times, as discussed in the book. The question does go like, well, when does someone become an adult? Is that when get their driver's license? Is that when you turn 18? You're able to join the military, the right to vote, 21, the full legal status. The book does talk about this period of marginality, a period where you're neither a child or an adult. And that's, it's like that that phase that you're kind of like confused and stuck, and you can kind of go back where uh, Erickson talked about that identity crisis, and these adolescents be stuck in these roles. Um, they're just stuck in these roles, and what's expected from them. Who am I, and stuff like that. Am I a dog? Am I a child? So moving forward to developing aspects of adolescence around the world. I'm sorry, around the world. Um, Roles are indicators of adolescence transitions. So those are roles given by society, what is expected from them during this stage. that leads to, again, what we discussed, the identity crisis, being stuck as an adult and child roles, the in between roles. Who am I? What am I supposed to do? Social and culture discontinuity. That's an abrupt or sudden change in role relationships that adolescents experience due to cultural conditioning that is overly emphasized in distinction between child and an adult. Benedict Ruth observed cultural discontinuity in industrialized societies, like in the U.S. She identified three stages of cultural discontinuity. That's number one, from a non-responsible to a responsible role. Number two, from a submission to dominance. And three is being sterile to being fertile. So those are Ruth's three 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 that were discussed in the book. Moving forward, so some societies, such as the Cheyenne Indians, in order for one to gain that recognition, the child must kill a bull to gain that status. So this is an example that was given in the book, and we're gonna go to subcultures and adolescent society. So James Coleman um, forced adolescents towards the peer subcultural limited adult interactions. So this found that in high um, technology and advanced societies, parents seem to have nothing in common with adolescents, or they're kind of like their children. Parents feel outdated. Parents don't understand, the trends that are going on. You might have, you know, a parent that doesn't even understand like social media, and now, some of our us younger generation, we're on our phones, and compared to probably some of your parents are, they might only have Facebook, and the younger might have TikTok. So just whole different worlds for them. So that's what makes up the subcultures, is that and you can kind of sometimes see this, how, you know if you ever gone to a party, you might see the adults sitting at one table, and kids sitting in a different table. It's because there is this subculture that we kind of, you know disconnect, from our parents, and from kids, that we disconnect. But we're focusing on adolescence here. So, some of the things that adolescence, subculture, I'm sorry, subculture, what what makes up that subculture? What makes it up is, it gives a sense of identity, a collective identity. It satisfies the needs for a primary group. It provides a collective protection from adult controls. So, according to sociologist Hans, there's some prerequisites for this adolescent subculture. That's uh, ununique values and norms. Two, in group a lingo or argot. Three, a distinct channel for communication. Four, a unique style of fads, trends, hairstyles that are short lived, and a sense of solidarity. So, Salad also talked about something called the romantic idealism, and that's one's attitude, perceptions, one's wishful or hopeful view of reality instead of the true reality. So, it's kind of like, you know, it's avoiding true reality. It's kind of your own reality in your head. And the book gives an example of Anne Frank's account of ideal optimism, and he said that, according to to Hans, is that any adolescent that's going through like a severe crisis, one will go through what, Anne Frank would, you know what she said from that excerpt, according to Anne Frank. So, during that time, there was really harsh conditions during World War II, but she still had this optimism that, the war will be over soon, and she never lost hope of, despite the horrors of war, mankind are still good people. And so that was an example of that was given of in ideal optimism from the textbook. And moving more with continuing with romantic idealism, this appears to be one of the most common and prerequisites for adolescents effective cognitive development. So it's, you know, it's and that's like dreaming, wishing, hoping, and are important to human growth. So now we're going to go into the counterculture movement. In the 1960s, the middle class youth had this this counterculture against, I would want to say, the adult values. And there in chapter 4, Reichs in the Green America, he kind of, you know, talked about that, where adolescents, I mean, kind of mentioned, but in that time, adolescents were kind of going around telling, don't listen to anybody over 36, do your thing. That represented kind of the romantic idealism of the 1960s. And also there was that hippie culture, the radical culture. And it was this was a period of rebellions against traditional adult values. That was like going everything against what their parents were, emphasizing, like, school, money, all this, stuff that, parents really were pressing on adolescents. And so adolescents were just rebelled. Oh, you know what, it's let's have fun, beauty, and let's experiment with sex, marijuana, LSD, and yoga. This was a direct expression to go against adult values at the time. Adult values was be germ free, save your money. Like, so they were just like tired of it. The way I kind of saw it, is like they rebelled against that. So and it was this liberation and humanism of revolution that the hippie culture wanted to, that was their goal. Um, Moving forward, with deviant behavior, deviant behavior is found in all social economics. However, it could be interpreted in different ways. For example, the textbook does talk about marijuana. Marijuana in a middle class might be different compared to somebody doing marijuana in a lower class. So it could be different. That's what it could be saying. The book kind of says, like, you know, in the lower economic class, they might be doing it for a different reason compared to a middle class adult. I mean teenager. Um, Delinquent subcultures are traditionally attributed to the lower class, but also it's attributed to the working class as well. So going to Miller's focal concerns of delinquency. Um, so Miller, said, contested these are, you know, I guess the focal concerns for delinquency is just stay out of trouble. Just instead of the middle class striving for success. Second, he talked about toughness, muscularity, showing this fearless power. Third is smartness, clever, a way to outsmart others, find ways around it. Excitement, to compensate for the deprived life found in the lower class. Um, and the adolescents will look for chills and kicks to compensate for that deprived life. Fifth, the fate, more concerned with getting by instead of getting ahead because of that feeling of powerlessness due to their socioeconomic conditions. Um, Problems, aspects of adolescence socialization and personality. So there was a survey conducted by Normas and Harris in American teenagers, and they just were surveying problems and concerns. And some of the things that were concluded from that is that parents are not really helpful about giving advice. 60% of them just take tests just to pass, not to learn. and 50% of them cheat. And there's more examples in the textbook, but these are some of just, what Harris and Norma's survey, concluded. Moving forward with adolescence problems is a joint problem of. So adolescence problems of, one, stress and the ununiqueness of adaptability. Second is stressful life events, traumas, loss of grief, breakups with friends. Third is the access for social support from parents, family, close friends, and the lack of effective strategies. So these are problems, joint problems found in adolescence. Moving to adolescent stress. So there's two types of stress that we experience. There's good stress, which is stress, and bad stress, which is distress. Um, Monaghan has a definition, provides that stress occurs to the context that there is a mismatch, which would be actual or perceived between the person and his or her environment. Lazarus put a little bit different, somewhat a definition, which said stress is perceived mismatch between the environment and the self that usually endangers one's mental and physical um, well-being instead of enhancing it. So there is this mismatch that's that may be perceived as a challenge depending on one's personal interpretation. Depending on one's adaptive capacity, um, depending on one's adaptive capacity of the person, um, too much challenge can be overwhelming versus too little of a challenge. So it's like too much is really bad. Too little is really bad as well. So the book kind of explains this optimal experience lies in the middle, and also they give a term as the psychic entropy. So the psychoanthropy is the condition in which one feels whole and acts in clarity, commitment, enthusiasm. And the textbook is an example as the tennis player that will not enjoy a game if their opponent is way highly experienced or just like not experienced at all. So there has to be that middle ground, that like I want to say that in the middle. Um, so the optimal experience is a balance of tension between challenges and skills, and when that is balanced, you enjoy it better. Um, Moving forward, the flow model experience, experiencing sampling. This was a kind of like it was actually a sampling method of experiment research by Larson. It was a self-reporting random moments of daily daily activities of adolescents, of teenagers, I would say. Um, so the participants were given a pager and notepad, and they were paged at random times, and they just briefly had to record, like, what were you doing at the time, what were you thinking, and they gathered information of American adolescents, like a profile of how they spend um, their time, their experiences, and they gathered like, you know, what they gathered in like what they felt, their emotions, their cognitions, and motivations. So the research concluded that one fifth of the time were spent with family, and less time with both parents. So from an adolescent's perspective, this was the information that was given to researchers. 50%, 52% spent time with peers. One fourth, which is like 25%, in solitude. That means kind of like in isolation at home in the rooms. Um, having that that being there in their rooms for a period of time, in their cell, playing video games and stuff like that. So, although that solitude sounds depressing, according to Larson. It's necessary to break free from those constraints of others. It's kind of like me time. Me time, and that's kind of put a lot in American culture. Is like that self time. Spend time. You need to spend some time for yourself, and and this allows that person to experiment with their thoughts. It's like self reflection, and it is it is a requirement for selfhood. So moving forward, the problems in family context, adolescents depend on the parent for emotional and material support. Family is a major source of stress. So there is five conflicts that are most likely to occur in adolescence, according to Norman and Harris. So that's the social life and customs. Like parents will say what type of friends you will have, the dating partner, the person you can date, social activities that you can go to, and how you dress. A second is the responsibility, like the kind of chores you'll have, how you're going to be spending your money, school, attendance, grades, these type of things, uh, type of control from parents. Um, Four is the family relationships. Sometimes that includes divorce and separations, but also it includes the invasion of privacy. Do you have privacy at home? Are your parents just going without knocking to your room? So what was very interesting about this is they actually asked the adolescents what advice you would give your parents, and that's listen and understanding, be upfront and honest, don't cop out about tough subjects, and understand why they're doing it, not just you know being very authoritative parent, and don't live in the past. uh, Discipline, but don't dominate. uh, Compromise and show love, and that you care, and you'll be there. What emerges from all this information is that communication is important. Social support, caring and accepting, trust and autonomy. That's the privacy. That's what these adolescents want. That's the feedback that was given to Norman and Harris in their research. I'm going to cross cultural comparisons. So in Japan, Japanese students study 244 days compared to America's school calendar, which is 180 days, and they go to school on Saturdays too. So we're talking about adolescents here, and Japanese students kind of take on more of more higher subjects like chemistry, algebra, and all this physics, stats that normally we'll see this being taught in universities or a college level in America. Suicide among adolescents are much lower in America. Sorry, suicide our rate are much lower in Japan compared to American adolescents. The dropout rate is much lower in Japan compared to Americans. 12% dropout rate, and juvenile delinquency is very low in Japan. And what they conclude is that this is because of this Japanese kind of authoritarian structure of their culture, and and they kind of lose out in that free thinking and creativity process. So that's kind of just a drawback. And so hopefully this helps. This concludes chapter 10 and adolescence and personality. Thank you.